instead of using the agriculture R&D spending versus agriculture GDP, you are suggesting to take into consideration the overall size of the economy and the per capita income. But are you suggesting to use these indices separately to compare across the countries, or are you suggesting to develop a kind of composite index?
Yes, the index is a composite index. It combines the three at the same time. The only problem we have with that is what are the weights you give to each index. That's the only problem. And normally, sometimes people building similar indices, because a lot of indices are built, combining different indices, just use subjective weights. In this case, I used a method, well, going to the fancy methods, but I used data envelope analysis to determine the weights based on exactly which is the most important index for each country. That will vary. So the weights will vary by country depending on the incidence of each index constraining R&D investment.
Merci aussi pour ces excellentes présentations. Je voudrais faire juste un petit commentaire par rapport au taux d'intensité que vous avez utilisé pour comparer les pays. Par rapport aux pays en voie de développement, moi je pense qu'il se pose également un problème de gestion, un problème de bonne gouvernance. Quand on utilise des investissements, cela dépend de la manière avec laquelle ceux qui gèrent font de ces investissements-là. Ensuite, lorsqu'on voit les pays développés et les pays en voie de développement, ils ne sont pas au même niveau. Donc, les investissements peuvent aller dans un ou une autre direction, parce qu'il peut se poser des problèmes d'infrastructure. Lorsqu'on investit intensément dans les infrastructures, je me demande quel sera l'impact sur le terrain. Donc, il faudrait justement voir tous ces aspects. Est-ce que ce modèle pour comparer les pays, je ne sais pas, tient la route, puisqu'on peut avoir plusieurs domaines justement d'investissement. Voilà un peu le commentaire que je tenais à faire. Merci.
Thank you for the question, because that is true. There are a lot of other factors affecting investment, right? It's not only the three that I mentioned here. But that's the whole point. Of course, we cannot bring into an index everything, like throw the kitchen sink there, because it's impossible to do analysis like that. Of course, that's the case. My point is that when you compare countries based on these differences, then you will find differences in investment between similar countries based on these characteristics. But that's the whole point, because then what you need to do is try to explain why country B is investing less than country C if they have similar characteristics. And that goes exactly to your point. So this index is not going to give you all the answers. It's not going to tell you, oh, you need to invest more in infrastructure. No, it will tell you that a similar country than your own country is investing a lot more. Why is that? That's the next step.
I think it's fairly well known that our national income account data for African countries and many developing countries is really poor. So I like the idea, but how sure are we that the numbers that underpins these indexes are valid enough to do your clustering properly?
Anyway, the index is using very basic information. Of course, there's going to be error measurements and things like that, but we're using GDP, GDP of the country, and GDP of the agricultural sector. So yeah, could be a problem, but I think it's readily available information in every country, and we need to deal with what we have. I think it's better to use that than to try to compare countries using the traditional intensity ratio.
My point is simplicity is better in most cases. The classical ASTI intensity ratio is much more simpler to be taken up by policymakers. They can understand it easily and do something to increase the performance of the R&D investment. This is one point. Another point is that the problem of the classical intensity ratio is clearly shown when Botswana's performance and Germany's performance were compared. Similarly, here in this case, how can Kenya perform much better than China and India, even from this index?
No, sorry. To compare countries with the new index, you need to go from the top of the graph down. So China, Kenya, Brazil, US, they're all at the same level, right? They are all on the same line. So the highest index is on the top, and you compare going down. If you use the traditional ratio, you compare from right to left. So that's where you get the usual results. The US has much higher intensity levels than China and India because it's all the way to the right, and China and India are, on the middle of the figure. The new index is just comparing countries top to bottom. So all the countries in the same line up there are at the same level of intensity. China, Kenya, Brazil, and the US.
Because the structural characteristics of countries are too different internationally. And this 1% target that is recommended by all these international institutions, that's also a pretty useless international target. But at the country level, if you only focus on the Ethiopian level and look at the Ethiopian intensity ratio over time, I think it's still a pretty useful indicator. But just the international comparison, that's the whole point here. For international comparison reasons, it's less useful.
Yeah,
But even at the country level, you can use to compare relative changes in the country, but you need to be very careful to set targets or things like that because it's not clear what the target should be for each country. I mean, the 1% target is not feasible for some countries, given their characteristics. So that's the only concern.